And we'll move on. So, Lord, I do thank you for your grace, your mercy, your loving kindness, Lord, that you've been so gracious to us, that you allow us to know you, Lord, that you draw us close to you, that you called us before the beginning of the foundation of the earth, Lord. We pray that tonight you would just fill us with your wisdom, Lord. Give us the Holy Spirit's presence. Let us lean on you in all things and not trust ourselves, Lord. Lord, I pray that you would just be with Jen as she brings the word tonight, as she begins to share her testimony and the work that you've done in her life, Lord, that you would put the words in her mouth and just be with her, Lord, and speak through her. Lord, I pray for everybody here and those online that they would hear something that was meant for them, Lord, that you would open their ears and hearts to your truth, and Lord, that you would just continue to bless us as you have, and we thank you in Jesus' name. So we are blessed here, and we are a self-sustaining church, which is why Danny's about to pass around a little plate. So that money, nobody here makes any money, takes any money. We all simply do this because we believe in what God is doing through the church and the recovery that can come there. And so we just asked that if you are able to, if you want to go online, we do have a website with a online donation portal there as well. But if you're here and you're able, that's great. That goes toward the Bibles, what we do, the equipment that allows us to broadcast, the signage out front, the food that we're going to enjoy afterwards. And again, remember that next week, Fifth Step, week after Vance Johnson's testimony, probably start a half hour early. I'll put announcements on Facebook, and we'll be at the front sanctuary in the bigger building, a little less raw than here. So that said, I'm looking for Jen's going to come up. It is testimony and anniversary night. So we do that at least once a month. And tonight is one of our founding members, Jen. Come on up.
All right, Jen.
And company.
And company. Okay, so when Lyle asked me last week if I would share this week, it was the absolute last thing in the world that I wanted to do, so I knew I had to. I've really been struggling the last couple weeks with feeling his love, and so therefore, of course, I'm going to get up and share my testimony because I don't want to, and he has used it every single day as an opportunity to put somebody in my path where he could reach out and stroke my cheek and say, I love you so much. Okay, you can't walk around. You can stand with me or you can go sit down, but you cannot be crazy girl, okay? Okay, so I started off life with that feeling of being unwanted. I started off with that feeling of being unwanted. I am the product of teen pregnancy. My parents were 17 and 18 when they got pregnant with me. There was absolutely no intention to get pregnant. Because I was on my way, they got married, and I think that it was the worst possible decision that they both made, the worst decision of their lives. They were so incredibly toxic together. My dad, by my second birthday, my dad had joined the Air Force so that he could run away from us and still be considered a good husband. When I was 3, we went out to visit him. My mom came home pregnant with my sister. By the time my sister was born, my dad had been thrown out. So he came home, and his mother met him at the airport instead of my mother. And when he showed up at my mom's house, or our house, my mom had divorce papers waiting for him. So I started off, I look a lot like my dad. And so every frustration that my mom had with not continuing her education, not progressing in her life, not having that smiley, happy family. She took that all out on me. By the time I was 10, I tell people by 10, I was a mother of two. Us girls are 4 years apart. So when I was 10, I had a 6-year-old sister and a 2-year-old sister. And when I got out of school, I would have to pick up the 6-year-old from her class, walk to the babysitter, get the 2-year-old, walk her home. I had to have the house clean and dinner on the table when my mom walked in. And then my mom was tired because she worked all day. So after dinner, I had to clean up and do all the dishes and make sure the girls did their homework and got their bath. And I had to put them to bed. And my mom was really struggling with depression. And she didn't know the way out. My whole childhood, she struggled with depression. And with that feeling of unworthiness, and she shared that with me. My earliest childhood memory, my parents had divorced when I was 4, and almost immediately my mom had met this other guy, and then this was back in the late 70s, early 80s, when cohabitation was not cool. I grew up in low-income housing, and they had a morals clause in her lease. So they found out that this man had moved in with my mom, and they said, you have 2 choices. You can either get married or you can move. So she married him. And my earliest childhood memory is going to my mom on her wedding day and saying, Mom, please don't marry him. He's a bad man and he touches me in bad places. And my mother told me that I was lying. She continued to deny that abuse for the next 6 years. My mom was very hands-off. I think she didn't know how to parent, and so she didn't try. She just kind of stepped back and let whatever happened. My stepfather was not only abusing me sexually, he was also extremely physically abusive, and everything that happened in the house was my fault. If my sister got hurt, well, I should have been watching her better. If my sister got a bad grade, well, I should have made sure that she was doing her homework. If he dropped something, well, I should have put it away. No matter what it was, I was the scapegoat. Everything was my fault. At one point, he had 3 motorcycle chains that were welded together and chrome plated. Go to Dan. Dan in the back, yeah. 3 motorcycle chains that were welded together and chrome plated, and he would beat me from the back of my shoulders to the back of my knees. There was one point when I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know how to express my frustration, and so I bottled and I bottled and I bottled. One of the older of my 2 younger sisters had hair down to the back of her knees, and it was my job to brush it and everything. And so there was one day that I'm trying to brush her hair, and it was really, really naughty, and she wouldn't sit still, and she kept moving, and she kept flinching, and I was getting more and more frustrated. So I started hitting her in the head with the brush. And then she went to school the next morning. She had holes all in her forehead from where I had hit her. And she went to school the next morning, and she asked the teacher if she could go to the nurse. She said, I have a headache, can I go to the nurse? So she went to the nurse and she laid down. I think she was about 6 at this point, so I was somewhere around 10 or 11. So I had the same school nurse from the time I started pre-kindergarten until the time I graduated 8th grade. Her daughter was in my class there was relationship between the nurse and our family, so it wasn't as weird as it would be now. But so my sister was laying down in the nurse's office, and the nurse comes over and just starts stroking her head, and my sister had bangs that covered her forehead. So the nurse starts stroking her head and starts seeing the holes, and she called the police. And the police came and talked to my sister, and my sister wouldn't tell them what happened. So they called me in the office and said that they wanted us to sit there and wait because they were calling the police on my parents for abusing my sister. And I had to say, no, it was me to keep, I didn't like my parents, but I also didn't want them to get in trouble. Like, it was all I knew. So I continued to just walk out that abuse on my stepfather's part and the neglect on my mother's part, and it started weighing on me more and more and more. My mom would get rid of all of us for all of summer vacation so that she didn't have to deal with us. So it was my grandparents and my two sisters, and she would divide us up and send us off. And she would always rotate so that we weren't in the same place all the time. So the summer that I was 12, I was at my aunt's house, and she didn't normally take me, but she was having a baby. And so it was a C-section. It was her second C-section in 3 years, and so she needed help to take care of her older child. And so I was left there with my uncle and this 3-year-old, and both my aunts truly, like, my mom's kids, I think that there's 6 years between my youngest sister and my oldest cousin. So none of them had kids, none of them knew anything about parenting. So my uncle just kind of let me run wild. Their house was in Rhode Island, and I was 12, and I had, I made friends with this girl down the street, and so whatever she did, I did. And July 4th, they had this big bonfire on the beach, and I went with this girl, and I had my first drink that night. And then I blacked out for about 5 hours. I remember taking that first sip and thinking that it was the most wonderful thing I had ever tasted. And then 5 hours later, I was back at my aunt's house 2 hours late for curfew. And my uncle asked me what was going on, and I remember just crying hysterically and saying that I was trying to get this girl out of the situation that she was in because she was down there and I was just watching her. I mean, I'm only 12. I would never, ever drink, but she's down there and she's drinking, and these men, they're like in their 20s, and they're trying to take advantage of her, and I'm just trying to save her. And he believed me. Or at least he pretended to believe me. Even now, I don't know if he actually believed me or if he just kind of let it slide. I remember him, like, after me telling him this, I remember him leaving the house and going to try and find this girl and see if she needed help. And he was gone for probably an hour. And then I passed out on the couch, and he woke me up when he got back and said that he couldn't find her. But to this day, I don't know if he actually believed me, and I'm that good a liar because I've tried lying a lot since then, and people can normally see through me. So the next morning I was like, okay, that was too risky. I can't do that again. So I didn't have another drink for a couple years. There came a time when I was 17, my mom and my stepfather had separated, and he wasn't supposed to be at the house. And he had stolen my mom's car from where she worked, and decided that he was going to try and get back on my mom's good side by detailing her car. So he stole her car, came to my house where he wasn't supposed to be, and decided that I needed to get off the phone. I was supposed to go to visit my other aunt. And so I was on the phone most of the day and, talking to my friends, and I'm not going to see him for a month or so, and, whatever. And so he's telling me to get off the phone, and I'm telling him, no, get off my property. You don't belong here. So he went outside and he cut my phone line. So I went outside and I was mad and loud and using not Christian language at all. And he beat the tar out of me. He threw me through the windshield of my mom's car. He had me in a chokehold up against a tree, just wailing on my stomach. When I went to the emergency room, they told me he did so much damage that I would never be able to conceive. I've had 12 pregnancies, so the doctors don't know what they're talking about. But I called my aunt and I said, okay, my mom had dragged me to see Billy Graham when I was probably 12 or 13, and I got saved. But I had no idea. I had nobody around me that was chasing God. I had no idea what a Christian was supposed to look like. And so that flame just kind of smoldered and went out. So I had called my aunt, who was the closest thing to chasing God that I had ever seen, and said, okay, this is what happened, and I need help. When he left my house, he went back to the office building that my mom worked in, and he busted past security, and he was screaming through the hallways because it was lunchtime, so my mom wasn't in her office. So he was screaming through the hallways and screaming through the cafeteria looking for her. And he found her, and she called me. And when she called me, the words that she said to me were, I can't deal with the two of you fighting anymore, so one of you has to go, and it's going to be you. So when I called my mom, my aunt, me and my mom argued all the time, and she threw me out like all the time, and I would go to a girlfriend's house and spend the night, and then I would come home and it was like nothing had ever happened. So I called my aunt and I said, I don't know what's going on, but I gotta get out of here. I can't take this anymore. How long can I stay? And she said, well, you can stay as long as you want. So I packed extra stuff. And then I had somebody come in and pick me up. I lived in Connecticut and she's in upstate New York outside Albany. So she had somebody come pick me up and bring me up there. And the next day my grandparents showed up there, and I told them what had happened and that I just couldn't deal with it anymore. And they put me in the car, drove me back to Connecticut to the police station. First they brought me to the emergency room. Then they drove me back to Connecticut to the police station so that I could file a police report. He got arrested. His rap sheet, he had just gotten out of jail for murder when he met my mom. His rap sheet is like pages and pages and pages long. So he got arrested, and the plea that he took said that as long as he did not place a hand on me for a year, it all just got thrown in the garbage. So my mom made me stay at my aunt's for a year so that he wouldn't hit me, so that he would not be in trouble. My aunt was phenomenal, but again, I'm 17. Her oldest was, I think, 5. Had no clue what parenting a teenager looks like. And that's one of my huge regrets, because once I got up there, all of a sudden it was like all the shackles were gone, all the restraints were gone. You know, the only people that are in charge of looking after me have absolutely no idea what their actual job description is. So they left me in the house. It was Easter weekend, and they were going to my uncle's parents' house. I think it's like 5 hours away from there. They were going up there, and they said, okay, but you can't have anybody over while I'm gone. So I said, oh, okay, of course, you know, your house, I'm not gonna let anybody in. And I tried really hard to do that. My initial plan was to have one girlfriend come and spend the weekend with me, just so that I wasn't alone. But the girlfriend that was supposed to come and spend the night got grounded at the last minute. So she said, hey, I had 2 best friends and they were sisters. She said, hey, you know, we're grounded and we can't go anywhere, but my dad said you can come here. And I said, okay, that's cool. She's like, all right, I'm gonna send my boyfriend to pick you up. So the 2 sisters' boyfriends, who were also best friends, came to pick me up. And they showed up with a 12-pack of beer. And then they went and got another, and another, and another. I remember 4 additional beer runs before I blacked out. My last memory of that night is hanging out the window, can't smoke in the house, hanging out the 3rd-story window of my bedroom with a cigarette in one hand and a beer in the other, talking to my friend on the phone. Yeah, we should be leaving soon, we're on our way, you know, whatever. My next memory is waking up the next morning and the guys were sneaking out and I was laying in a puddle of blood. I have no blackout. No idea what happened that night. I was raised Catholic, and being raised Catholic in a dysfunctional household, what was implied to me was that I only had one thing that was worth value, and that was my virginity. Nothing else in me means anything. So I can stand here today and say that it was rape, but back then I didn't see it that way. Back then it was, I've lost the only thing of value, so I'm just gonna take this path and run. I very quickly became a vodka drinker, because I could put the vodka in the water bottles and take them to school with me. I did manage to graduate high school. I was drunk for the next 5 years. There was not a time when I wasn't drunk. After about 6 months, I started making sure I had enough in the bottle at night to start my morning. And it was bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. I was drunk. I woke up in the morning still drunk from the night before and just continued drinking all day. I managed to graduate high school by the skin of my teeth. I think that last marking period I had like straight D's, and my GPA was from before that was just enough that I could graduate. One drink to another drink, one guy to another guy, one bad situation to another bad situation. At one point, I had gone to this biker party with, he wasn't even the boyfriend, he was the sugar daddy. But I went to this party with him, and he stepped out, and I met this other guy while I was there, and he moved into my house that same day. And shortly thereafter, I started getting sick. Every morning I would wake up and throw up. And at this point, I was drinking like a gallon of Jack Daniels a day. And so obviously I can't drink Jack Daniels anymore. So I made my very first deal with God. And I said, okay, if I never drink Jack again, can I please never throw up again? It turns out I was 5 months pregnant. God covered my child. He was not born with fetal alcohol. He was not born with any disabilities or deformities, only by the grace of God. But when I found out I was pregnant, I went home and I told this guy, I just found out I'm pregnant. And he's like, oh great, I'm gonna be a dad. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. We've been together 3 months and I'm 5 months pregnant. I don't care, I'm gonna be a dad. So now I'm obligated to him because I'm worth nothing. And now you're gonna take care of me and this child, supposedly take care of me. I was with this man for 10 years total. He worked for 4 weeks of that 10 years. I was always working 2 or 3 jobs. Once all the kids started coming, boom, 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 because the first one I lost custody when he was about 2 months old. His mother said, hey, I know that you guys are struggling and you're trying to find, we were like couch surfing. I know that you guys are struggling and you're trying to find a place of your own, so why don't you let the baby come stay with me? That way you know that he's cared for and safe. I'll come see you every other day. You can call as many times as you want, and blah, 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 blah. From the time the car drove away from my house, she never answered her phone again. After 10 days, we got up at 3 in the morning and walked the 17 miles to her house to say, okay, enough is enough, give me back my kid. When we get there, she wasn't at her house, so we walked the half a mile to her sister's house, and her sister said, the baby is here and the baby is safe, but I can't let you in. She should be back any minute now. Well, it turns out she had gone to the court and said that we abandoned him. We were calling like 15 times a day and she wasn't answering. So as soon as they took that one away, I was pregnant again, and then I was pregnant again, and I was pregnant again. I've had 12 pregnancies. I have 4 children. So I had 7 miscarriages and an abortion that figures in later. But it started this cycle where I was constantly pregnant. And now I can't drink anymore because alcohol is going to hurt the baby. But I can do all the natural stuff. So all the stuff that was natural I was doing even though I was pregnant. All the way up through. To this day, I truly think that smoking pot while you're pregnant leads to ADHD. Every single one of my kids has ADHD. I seriously think that that's where it came from. So it was like this vicious cycle. I would get pregnant and I would either miscarry and get pregnant again, or I would have another baby, or it just kept going for that whole 10 years that we were together. So, and this man was a cult leader. I I really struggle when I watch shows on like David Koresh, or I'm sorry, but I'm an American Horror Story junkie, and that cult season, like that is my first husband. From day one, there were other women that I knew about. There were other men that I didn't know about. And the whole thing was just toxic, toxic, toxic. So the cycle went on and on and on until after my son that comes here, after he was born. After he was born, then I was no longer like the quiet little groupie. I was starting to remember that wasn't me, and that the things we were doing weren't right. So we had this S&M club that had just opened, and he decided that was the answer. So he put me in the car, and he drove me over there. He had to drive because I wasn't allowed to have a license. He drove me over there, and he had a conversation with this guy, and he told this guy that he was going to come and drop me off every day so that this guy could teach me how to obey him. This is when I started drinking again, because life was so chaotic. So now I'm drinking and smoking and whatever else. This guy ended up leaving that club, and he passed me off to another woman. And she was actually my saving grace on the way out. When at the club they did these shows, so I was on stage and I was doing the shows, and the only money that I made was the tips that came in. So when he left and this other girl came in, I told her, well, I have to leave because my father-in-law just kicked us out, so we're not sleeping on his couch anymore, and I don't have anywhere to sleep, so I have to leave because I have to go get a job, because I have to be able to provide for the 2 children that I was blessed enough to be able to raise. And she said, well, I have this lap dance club that's 6 doors down. So why don't you work there during the week and come here on the weekends, and then everybody's happy. So we got to the point where I was making easily $5,000 or $6,000 a week. And that's when he started smoking crack. He had smoked once or twice when I was pregnant with my daughter. And God really looked out for me, because when I walked into the house where he was at, the smell made me throw up. And so, although, for the longest time, I was the garbage can. Here, Jen, try this. Here, Jen, take that. Here, Jen, here, Jen, here, Jen. Whatever was around, I would just take it. But from the very beginning, I said, okay, I can't smoke that. That stuff's gross. That smells horrible. So I'm not even gonna smoke that. And that was my saving grace, because I definitely would have been dead in a gutter somewhere. He had smoked a couple times and then he stopped. And then when I was working at the club and we had so much money, that's when he started smoking again, and it got bad. And there was a guy that was working in, there was a guy that belonged to my mistress, which at the time was a totally normal phrase. And he disappeared one day. And it was a Thursday morning. My husband at the time, he had dropped me off at work, and he would drop me off in the morning and pick me up at night, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So he dropped me off Thursday morning, and then Dusty disappeared. And then Thursday night, he didn't come to pick me up. And I didn't hear from him all day Friday. I didn't hear from him all day Saturday. And so I slept at the club. My mistress also slept at the club. She lived in New York and came to Connecticut just on the weekends. So I had slept at the club. Saturday, like really, really late night after we had closed, Dusty finally snuck in. And I knew that he had started smoking when he started smoking, but I totally did not understand crack. Did not at all understand how evil and life-sucking that drug is. So Saturday night, Dusty comes back, and we said, well, where the hell have you been? And he says, well, I've been with her husband. Okay, and where's that? We were at the crack house. Dusty, where are my children? They're with him. He showed up about 6:30 Sunday morning to pick me up, and it was my one act of bravery. I walked out to the car. I unbuckled my daughter's car seat and handed her car seat and all to my boss. I unbuckled my son's car seat, turned around and walked in the building, never even said a single word to him. We got inside, and sorry, Justin. Justin was just over a year old. He was still in diapers. The rash that was on his butt, because he had the same diaper on that he had on Thursday morning, he had on Sunday morning. The rash that was on his rear end took me 6 months to clear up. My daughter was 3, and she sat at the bar and inhaled food for 3 straight hours at the age of 3, because there were no diaper changes, there was no food, there was no nothing all weekend long. So that was my one act of bravery. I took my kids and I walked away and never looked back. A week later, I got a call from the police department. Ma'am, your husband has been in a serious accident. And I said, is he dead? No, ma'am, but he's in critical condition and you really should get to the hospital. Can you do me a favor? If he dies, can you call me back? And the guy was like, excuse me? And I said, well, this man has worked 4 weeks in the last 10 years. He is he's a crackhead. He is worth absolutely nothing to me alive. But if he dies, I can get Social Security and it will help me raise my kids. But he didn't die. So I had somebody, like sporadically a couple people would watch my kids so that I could actually go to work. And then alcoholism and sexual addiction took back over, and I was supposed to be staying with this guy, and he was supposed to be taking care of my kids while I was at work. And then one morning, I was in the mood and he was not. And I said, okay, well then fine. So I went to work and I went home with somebody else. So he showed up at the other guy's door and said, here you go, here's your kids. So now I had nobody to watch the kids, and that is the only reason that I left the club. Drinking every day. This new guy drinks every day. He's doing lines. I'm smoking my weed. One big happy family. Nobody's paying attention to the kids most of the time. He had actually worked at the other club, and that was how I knew him. So he would leave and go to the club, and I knew that there was other women, and it didn't matter. And then I said, okay, I'm drinking too much, I gotta dry out. And I did, I white knuckled it for quite a while. And then we moved down to Florida, and then came a period where it was like Friday night or Saturday night, we would start drinking again, but only Friday night or Saturday night. And then it became just when I got home from work. And then there was a bunch of stuff that happened, but it's my daughter's story, and I'm on Facebook, so I'm gonna skip it. We had gone up to New Hampshire, and then we escaped and came back down to Florida. And I came back with 2 really broken children. And my daughter was really, really broken, and I had nobody that I could go to. I had no mentors. You know, I hadn't, at this point, my daughter is 16. I haven't even talked to my mother in 15 years because I was just done there. So I had nobody that I could lean on, nobody who would show me the right way. And I continued to make some really bad choices. And my daughter began her progression of making some really bad choices. And I didn't stop her because, hey, this is fun. So I just kind of, I let her go wherever she wanted to go. And I let her do whatever she wanted to do because at least she's talking to me. At least I know where she is. So one Saturday came, she had this girl that used to come and spend the night at our house all the time. And one Saturday came and she was gonna go spend the night at that girl's house. And I was like, okay, whatever. You know, I'll be at work tomorrow anyway, blah, blah, blah. Well, she texts me Sunday morning and she says, Mom, this girl's mother is making me go to church with them. I am never coming over here again. And my answer was like, okay, look, just sit in the back, shut up, play on your phone. It'll be over in an hour, and we'll just make sure she can come here, but you're not going there. 3.5 hours later, she calls me, and she still can't breathe. She's been crying so hard. And she says, Mom, you need to come here. Oh, come on. No. Mom, I'm telling you, this is different. Because I worked on Sundays, it took me probably 2 months before I was actually able to make it there for a Sunday. That was 8 or 9 years ago. I think in that 8 or 9 years, there has been 9? Okay. I think there's been 3 Sundays where I didn't go to church. By the time I left there, I had rededicated my life, recommitted myself to going back to white knuckle it. When I walked into that church that day, the very first person that I saw was Dan. Dan is totally not my type. If you look at both of my ex-husbands, I like guys with long black hair, play the guitar. Like if Nikki Sixx was available, I would have been there. Nothing like Dan. And I asked my daughter, I was like, who is that? I don't know, Mom. Some old guy. My daughter had been there every single Sunday. She was now there every single Wednesday for youth group. She, because she's going Wednesday night and my son's going to be home alone, he's like, yeah, I might as well go with you. On fire. Now I'm the only, when I walked in there, I was like the only one of the three of us not walking with God. So the first person that I had seen was Dan. And God told me, sit down and shut up. That's the one that I have for you, but he's not ready yet. So I sat there for almost a year and a half watching him, developed a friendship with him. He was dating somebody else, and I actually found out his name because he showed me a picture of the birthday cake his girlfriend made for him. And I was on fire, like all in, 100%. I rearranged my work schedule so that I could be there for church on Sunday, so that I could be there for Bible study on Wednesday. We had a guy that used to drive the church van, and he had a heart attack, so he was out for a little while. And so they came and they said, hey, Jen, do you think that you could possibly just go? It was mostly youth on the van. Do you think that you could go and just pick these kids up on Wednesday and bring them home? Yeah, of course, I'm all in. A couple months later, Dan actually had a class right before Bible study. And he got his kids over the summers. So his kids were at his house, so he came to me. Our first real conversation was, hey, I have this class and I don't have time to go from class back to the house to get the kids. Can you come and pick up my kids on Wednesdays? I'll get them home, but can you come and get them? So the relationship just kept walking, and it was little tiny baby steps, and then we started dating, and we knew immediately. We were both still married to our previous spouses, but we had both been separated for long periods of time. We knew almost from the beginning that this was forever. So we both got our divorce papers in, got everything finalized, set a wedding date. We get married, everything's good, all the roses in the beginning. And then right before our first anniversary, Dan gets caught messaging another girl. It was not a physical affair. It was questions. The other girl was a lesbian, and it was okay, well, let's talk about the bedroom and let's talk about what's going on, kind of stuff. And it was a girl that I had told him to stay away from because I had already heard her history and her story. So I told him, don't even talk to her. Don't even give her your number. If she sends you a friend request on Facebook, get rid of it. Have absolutely nothing to do with this girl. And he didn't listen. And so then there were conversations that should not have happened. And she wanted me to do something for her, and I don't even remember what it was, but I told her no, I wouldn't do it. And so because she was mad at me, she went to the pastor and said, look at the things. Now, she had deleted her responses and stuff. look at what Jennifer's husband is sending to me. So Dan had a road that he needed to walk. I stood there in that instance. I walked in the house and I used all of my un-Christ-like words at loud volume. And then I said, okay, now you need to get out your Bible and you need to sit down and get into your word. And I took my Bible and I walked out the door. And I went and sat in the parking lot of the church for 2 or 3 hours, reading and praying and reading and praying. And then I went back to the house. And I said, okay, are you full right now? And he said, yes. And I said, okay, then get in the car. And I drove back over to the parking lot of the church because it was a safe place. And I looked at him and my first question was, okay, are you at that point where you don't actually love me and you're ready to divorce? And he said, no, and I said, okay, stop. We need to figure out how we need to fix this then. So we went and we sat and we talked to the pastor, and the pastor prescribed, at this point Dan was on the worship team and in the sound booth, and he had plugged himself in, and obviously he needs to come out of leadership. So this is what the path of restoration is going to look like. So that next Friday, Dan says, God has really been putting it on my heart all week long that I need to go to this recovery meeting that happens in the church, at that church on Friday nights. And I said, okay, well, you do that then. You have a problem. You go to recovery meetings, and we'll talk about it later. So he starts going, and at the time, it was a husband and wife that were conducting the meetings, and the wife had just had a baby, and she was out. So when he started going, it was just a group of guys. And every week when he came home, I would say, okay, was it still just the guys? And he's like, yep, just guys. So one Friday he comes home and he says, okay, well, this small group of girls showed up. And I said, okay, well then I'll start coming with you until the wife comes back. I'll start going with you because although, I got nothing to do with this recovery stuff, I am church leadership, and at least I'm there for accountability. We walked out that night, and I looked at Dan, and I said, I'm an alcoholic. I have to be here. I need help. I'm an alcoholic. So Dan and I got sober together. It was September 27th, 2014. And he walked out. 6.5 years, whatever that is. Yeah, that would be 14. I don't say it often. So, since then, God has completely restored me as a person. I can stand here and say, I'm a child of God. I am a beautiful creation. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. And I can look in the mirror. I was never able to look in the mirror because I didn't like what I saw. He has completely restored my marriage. He is not the man that I married. The same way I am not the woman that he married. But God knew who we were and that we would complement each other. And we started, he planted us next to each other and we grow around each other, and every time one of us starts to veer off, the other one will grab him and pull him back in, and then the other one will start to wander off, grab him and pull him back in. And so he's created the most beautiful thing I have ever experienced. My daughter got stuck in that addiction cycle all the way up through after Cordelia was born. And so now she has said, I know it's possible because I see what he's done in you. I see you continuing to change. So now we have started the generations of healing. We have started the healthy coping mechanisms, and we have started the healthy communication that we never had before. And so God has just done such a miracle in our lives, each and every one of us. And that beautiful little princess running around here where she shouldn't be is a gift that he has given so that I can see it doesn't need to be like this. I want to thank everybody for being here and supporting me. I love you all.
Hey, thank you for your speech.
I am way to take it.
Hey, thank you.
Well, thank you, Jen, for sharing with us. And definitely, God does amazing things. And he can turn anything around. And that is what we're about. And that's what we see on a daily basis here. So please, if you know anybody that needs this, bring them with you. So this is testimony and anniversary night. So normally we do the surrender cross, which I'll explain. That is just simply where instead of what traditionally in most 12-step formats, you have a white chip or whatever color chip you pick up to designate that you're beginning a new way. Our surrender cross is the same thing, except that you'll be able to lay some